Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at G.R.A.C.E Financial Coaching. And today we are talking to my friend, Kelly Flowers. Kelly is a financial coach who, after being a registered nurse for over 30 years, specializes in working with healthcare professionals. Kelly works with her clients to gain clarity over where they are currently and discover where they would like to be financially down the road. By working together, Kelly helps her clients build the confidence they need to make strong money decisions, allowing them to regain financial control. Good morning, Kelly. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how we made the transition from nursing to financial coaching.
Sure. So I was in nursing for 30 years. And then after COVID, because I did not comply with the vaccination mandate, I lost my job. And so with that, because my husband and I were financially stable after, getting out of debt and everything, I was able to take some time off and decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And if I wanted to stay in healthcare or if I wanted to look for something new. And so I came across Financial Coach Master Training through Dave Ramsey. And after, debating for a little bit, I decided to take the course. And after that, I launched my business in January of 22. And since then, I've been a financial coach, and it's been a great transition. The things I've learned in nursing have definitely complemented my coaching career. And it's been a great ride.
What's one thing you would say that is similar to from nursing and financial coaching?
Assessing where your clients are and being able to ask appropriate questions. The only downfall coming from nursing to coaching is I want to fix everybody's problems. So as a nurse, they come into me and I fix the problem. But as a coach, you have to actually rethink the way that you ask your questions and you guide them to come to the conclusions themselves. And so that's been a big transition for me because I'm definitely ingrained as being a fixer.
Yes, absolutely. So the triage / assessment is the same.
Yes.
How do you guide? Now we'll take a step back actually. What was your experience with Dave Ramsey prior to the coach training?
Oh, sure. So my husband and I, back in about 2009, ended up going through his Financial Peace University class. And with that, we weren't gazelle intense the way he talks. We were Dave-ish, but we did get out of debt. And we were able to really rethink our finances, the way we budget our money and what we do with our money when we're spending it. And so with that, when it came to the point where I knew I was going to lose my job, it didn't become a crisis. It became more of something that I was able to transition out of something that I've done for a long period of time. And then what was nice, I was able to take time to think about what I wanted to do next. So it was about 6 or 7 months before I decided to venture into anything new. And I don't know what it would have been like to have that anxiety of having to have my paycheck going back if I had a lot of debt. Like we're completely out of debt. At this point, we're baby step millionaires.
I just saw a meme yesterday that said, I can't even remember what the picture in the background was, but it said, I don't want money for the sake of wanting money. I want money for the sake of the options that it gives me.
Yes. And it really gave me options.
Yeah. Not having those monthly payments, not having, not being indebted literally to anyone, any creditors or anything like that. And having that 6-month savings account, which especially during COVID, there was a big argument among Ramsey coaches that the guidance of a 3 to 6 month emergency fund needed to be extended to 6 to 9 or potentially even 6 to 12 months. And I do know that there are some coaches out there that still subscribe to that for those people who are in businesses that were deemed not important. If you were a restaurant general manager making $120,000 a year, you weren't important enough to keep your job.
Nope.
And does a restaurant general manager most likely have 6 to 12 months? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. And that doesn't mean that restaurant general managers don't handle money. As you well know, there are lots of healthcare professionals who don't have 6 to 12 months of savings.
They don't have $1,000 in their savings. Yes, I know.
I had to have a really hard conversation last night with someone who said, we're struggling. We have a $30,000 emergency fund. And I said, they didn't believe me, and I pulled it up, but most Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency. Anything over $400 goes on a credit card.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that their situation is any less important. They are, they have debt that they need to pay off, but having that $30,000 emergency fund, we're probably going to break into that a little bit to start the debt payoff process moving.
Yes.
And then hopefully we get to a place where we can refill that emergency fund, obviously, very quickly. Yeah. So working with, I know you work with everyone, but specifically with healthcare professionals, how do, there is a stereotype of doctors and nurses being very bad with money. It's so true. So now, why do you think that is? And I have lots of medical professionals in my family, and
the reason I think that is because they don't have time to think about it. I think they're tired. Working in a hospital, I worked in a hospital for 30 years, worked alongside, doctors and nurses and PAs and respiratory therapists. They work very long hours. It can be very stressful. You are giving. And when you go into healthcare, you are a giver. You give of your time, your energy, all of your effort. And you are, and because of that, you really put yourself last. Most of the nurses that I've worked with over the years, and even, doctors, and they put other people first before they put themselves. And so by the time they get home, they're taking care of their families if they have them. And then even on their days off, they're too tired to think about it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing with healthcare professionals, they come out of school with a lot of debt. You cannot go into healthcare without having they come out with some sort of student loan debt, whether it's medical school, nursing school, whatever. And it's not cheap anymore. And these programs are extremely expensive. They're difficult to get into. And so they come out behind the 8 ball. And no one teaches them what it's going to look like when they come out. They come out, all of a sudden they get this great job. It pays well. And then they think they need to also live this lifestyle of having a better car, getting a better apartment, having all of these things because this is what I do. And there's a stigma to that. Like, oh, if you're a doctor, you should be driving a newer car, a brand new car, not something that's been around for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why they carry the debt. And to be honest, they don't know how to get out from underneath it. They don't know where to start. And it goes back to having clarity of where you are. And so many people just don't know where they are, what they have, and the possibilities that are before them.
Right. And a lot of these people have what Dave Ramsey likes to call a big shovel. Yes. Maybe not the first 2 years, right? Maybe not even the first 3 years, but you hit year 4, 5, 6, you've got a big shovel.
Yes.
One of the most important things that I've seen with the healthcare professionals I've worked with is you can outdig your shovel. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm probably not using the right verb there, but you can get to year 4 and hit $200,000 a year. Yes. And you may have done so much damage in those first few years, adding to your student loan debt, that all of a sudden you're a very young medical professional and it seems insurmountable. Yep. Absolutely insurmountable.
Yep. Yeah, I have a friend, a fellow nurse. Her daughter went to PA school, and she first did her undergrad, and then she went into PA school. But by the time she was coming out of school, she had $300,000 worth of debt. Yeah. Yep. And it's absolutely. Like she didn't even start yet. You know what I mean? And
when I went to college, the only time I ever heard of someone having that much debt was a married couple who had met in law school.
Yeah.
And now, by the way, as we're recording this, I just got an invitation to my 20th college reunion. I'm going to have a meltdown. But that was
the time though, right? It's crazy.
That was 20 years ago. So they each had 150,000 in, or whatever the breakdown was. You know, one had 110 and one had 180 or whatever. Sure. But they each had some undergrad, and then their entire law school. And so they
Yeah.
got married. The day they got married, they had $300,000 in student loan debt.
Yeah.
And that would have been unheard of 20 years ago. Unheard of.
And it's so common today. Like it's just a blink. And the kids, unfortunately, don't know what they're signing up for. And then they come out and it's like they don't know where to go. And you just hear, I can't ever get ahead. I just feel like no matter what I do, even if I'm working overtime, I'm still not getting anywhere. And they have the capability. I mean, they do 12-hour shifts. They work 3 days a week now, and they have the capability of really pulling in some overtime that they could get out of debt super fast. Like they have capability to do it. They just don't realize it.
Right. And the other caveat is, and again, this applies to everybody, but just keeping up with the Joneses, going out for happy hour on the 3 days a week they're not working, or 4 days a week they're not working, depending on shifts, obviously. Overspending, getting into the mindset of there is a healthy level of self-care, and then there is the overspending that occurs. The boredom, the trying to fill a void, the just going shopping to go shopping instead of going with a plan. And then, of course, not that I need to tell Kelly or most of any of my listeners this, the food. Food is
huge.
It's ridiculous.
It is the biggest budget buster that there is. And I say it to my clients all the time. I'm like, and I always challenge them. This is one of my biggest challenges for my clients. I said, I want you to pay cash. And they go, what? I go, I want you to pay cash. I said, your challenge for the month is to take your budget, break it down into 4 weeks. And once a week you go to the grocery store and you pay cash. And I said, I guarantee you will come back with some money and you will not overspend. And it's true. They all come back saying to me, that's amazing. And it scares me a little. I said, I know it's going to scare you. I said, but when you do that, I said, your whole mindset shifts of when you only have so much money, it's like you just totally revamp what you're going to buy.
To me, the biggest problem with the healthcare professionals is the takeout, the DoorDash, the Grubhub, like you said, being exhausted at the end of an 8 to 12-hour shift, or being held over and getting home and thinking, I just worked 16 hours. I'm not cooking.
Well, and even to go in with that, they order out when they're in the hospital. So I mean, every Friday when I worked, it was order out day, and they're like, are you participating? I'm like, no, I'm not ordering out. I always brought my lunch, but because you never knew when you were going to eat. So by the time you ordered something, you might not be eating till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's cold by then, but they order out all the time. And then there's the pressure of having to participate in that.
Yes. And it's funny that you mentioned it was every Friday.
Oh, every Friday.
It's every day now.
Yes.
It's every shift. Yes. Forget about Fridays, especially if you're working in something like an ER where you're rotating. But I mean, it's every day. And so I would actually, when you said every Friday, my first thought was, God, I wish my clients only ordered out on Fridays.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that's the unit that I worked in. And then there would be other people who, like, as a group, they all ordered out on Friday. So there was the pressure of doing that. And then the other pressure was we would always chip in at Christmas time for gifts for our managers and for like our transporters, our orderlies and stuff. And so then there was the added pressure of having to give for that, and so it wasn't cheap either. I mean, there was many of us, so it was cheap for us to all chip in, but some people didn't have that money. It could be $40 or $50 you're chipping in for everybody, which is great. But some people, again, the pressure to be able to participate in those things, and they don't want to appear like they don't want to do that.
Right. They don't care, or they don't want to participate. Exactly. Right. Definitely. Well, Kelly, I know that you haven't always been the smartest with money. No one on this show ever has. We've all made our financial mistakes. That's why we're here.
Yes.
So what would you say is the dumbest thing you've ever done with money?
Oh, the dumbest thing we've ever done with money was lease a car when we were younger. And this was before our Dave Ramsey days, and all the leases were starting to come out, and our family was growing. So we needed a new vehicle because, our family was growing. And so we decided to lease this vehicle. And then when it came time, and it was great, you're just making your payments. You don't even really know. We didn't do any research. We just thought, this is the thing to do now, And so by the time we ended up at the end of our lease, it was a 2 or 3 year lease at this point, handing the car back in, and then bam, you're getting hit with all these fees. And so it's not just, the miles, it was the restocking fee, and you had to do this fee and you had to do that fee. And I was like, oh, wait, what? And we were really on a tight budget at the time. And so anything above what that payment was totally threw our budget off. So it was like $400 or $500 that we had to come up with as we were restocking that fee. And then of course we were making another bad decision, because then we had to get a different car. Right. So instead of going to the lease mode, we ended up just purchasing the car on a regular car payment, which we don't do anymore either. But it was like, we just were making one step after another. And in hindsight, it was showing me that was so putting us behind financially, because it was, we were paying somebody else instead of just backing up and not having that new car. Because, everybody would say to you, oh, get a new car. You're going to have a car payment every 4 years anyway. So you might as well just get something that's reliable now that you're having all these kids. And so we believed the lie and did what everybody else was doing. But, in hindsight, it just stole from our financial future. Mm-hmm. And it took us longer to get out of debt than if we had just bought a car that was within our means, that was reliable enough to get us to where we needed to go, and then just upscale as our finances allowed us to.
Right. So now what kind of car were you going from and to?
Well, we were going from a used, at this time it was a Chevy Blazer. They were the old ones, and we were going to a new one. Okay. And so we were bouncing up because the old one was having issues. And so we thought we're having our third child and we needed the extra space. And so we decided to go and lease the vehicle because it was a cheaper payment and it kept us within. But then at the end, we ended up paying, I feel, more money than what we should have, because even when you've traded it back in, you're really only paying the interest on the vehicle. You're not putting anything in.
Right.
So to even purchase the vehicle at the end, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I wish they would call it, and they're not going to call it this because otherwise people would actually pay attention, but I wish they would call it renting a vehicle.
Yes, because
you would not go to Hertz or Enterprise and rent a vehicle that you planned on keeping for 4 years. You would tell me I was a crazy person if I told you to do that. Yeah. But that's what you're doing.
Yes.
You're renting your vehicle. Yes. And then if anything is wrong with it at the end, just like as you rent an apartment, you end up owing the landlord for being over miles, for that hole in the sheetrock, for the damage your dog did to the kitchen floor. And so I wish people would call it renting cars, because it is a form of renting a car. You do not own that car. And if anything happens to that car while you have it, just like when you're in the apartment and your dog puts its head through the sheetrock, you're responsible for fixing that sheetrock. Yes. Also responsible for fixing that car. You're basically just renting it for a period of time.
Yes. And so we came to we finally realized, after going through the Dave Ramsey course several years later, and we're like, oh, like we have just wasted so much money. And then that's it's the regret. It's the, like, how stupid can you be? Start talking to yourself. And it's like, okay, we've done that. We'll never do it again. We realized what we've done. And now it's being able to figure all those things out and move forward on a different path. Yeah. And so do I regret it? Of course we do. Have we learned from it? Yes. Will I ever do it again? No. But, sometimes those mistakes come along so that it gives you the experience. You can share it with somebody else. And it teaches you to not do something else. Like, mistakes are just things that we learn from.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of the wisdom that comes from this show is someone else has done it before you and can explain why this is a bad idea. Not because they read a Dave Ramsey blog or listened to a show or found something on nerdwallet.com. They've done it and they've messed it up themselves. I think one of the most powerful episodes we've ever had, and I refer to it somewhat relatively often, we had a fellow financial coach. You probably know him. And he bought a lemon, but he bought it private. And that was it. It was too late. And his story was so compelling because there was so much emotion surrounding it plays a lot into your story. Yeah. their family was growing.
Yeah.
And we're not making sound financial decisions when we're subconsciously allowing our emotions to take over.
Correct.
We have to take a step back and say, am I making this decision because this is what is necessary for our family or for me and the dog right now? We have to separate those decisions from our emotions. 99% of the time we can't do that because we're humans. We're humans. There's nothing wrong with you. We're all humans. But if we don't have, that's to me probably one of the most important things about coaching is having somebody else to say, are you doing this because this is necessary, or are you doing this because you're emotionally overwhelmed because you and your girlfriend just broke up, because you're having your third kid, because your spouse is leaving you?
Yeah.
You know, what are the emotional, environmental factors going on right now that are causing us to make this decision? The answer usually is no, there's nothing else going on.
Right.
And it's our job as coaches to say, okay,
let's look at that. Is it really
1% of the time nothing's going on? 99% of the time something else is going on.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And another thing I do with my clients as well is I teach them to pause. I just call it the pause method. I said, if you're looking to purchase something in such a hurry, and I said, just take 24 hours, step back for a minute, walk away from it. If it's truly something that you need, it'll be there tomorrow.
Yep.
And it will be there the next day. But let's step back. And I always say to them, call me, reach out. Let's talk it through. Like I want to be able to understand what's driving this for you. And that pause method is just so huge in instructing clients how to just take a deep breath. Even when you're shopping online, I said, leave it in your cart and walk away for 24 hours. And I said, you don't have to get rid of it. Just put it in the cart and walk away. And I said, because just because it's on sale, it doesn't mean it's the best thing at that moment in time.
No. The best advice I ever got was from my grandmother. And back then the example would have been, you found a sweater at Macy's, right? In person, because that's how we did our shopping.
That's right.
And if you go home and all you're thinking about is that sweater for the next 24 hours, and you have the money for it,
key,
you are allowed to go back and go get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She, was such and I'm totally dating myself now, but Pier 1 Imports no longer exists, right? But she used to go in there, and that stuff was so insanely expensive. Yes. She used to go in there and go straight to the clearance rack and find the coolest stuff, But the tags would say $7, originally $47.
Yeah.
And so, there's always a little bit of room for impulse shopping and things like that. Thrift stores, discount, I always tell people, if you're going to Target, go to the end caps. And that is like the key of where to find the cheap stuff at Target. I can't tell you how many sets of sheets, and I'm not a Target shopper, but I'll go in I'm not kidding, once or twice a year. And they'll be at the end of an end cap, a set of king size sheets. And I'm like, I've been looking for king size sheets, and these are marked down to $19.
They're mine.
$79.99.
I know.
But yeah, it's just a matter of being able to have that emotional control.
Yes.
And to be able to say to yourself, we've never leased a vehicle before. Yeah. We're having another child. We may be very emotional right now
about this a little bit, right? Yes. And it's funny. Like, we came out of it. We both looked at each other when we handed the car back in, and we're like, yeah, we're never doing that again. Oh. And it was like these huge light bulbs. And, it was years later, we were looking for another vehicle. And so it comes full circle. And I remember walking in and them saying, this is what we can afford. And, and they couldn't come down to the price. And the guy would say to me, well, if you just added $5 to it, you could buy the car. Like, if you could just do, you could add $5 to your payment or whatever it was going to be. And I looked at him and I said, and he goes, so you're going to walk away? And I turned around and I looked at him and I said, no, actually, I said, you're going to let us walk away. I said, because you didn't meet where we needed to be and what our price was. And so I said, if you really wanted to sell this car, I said $5 wouldn't be a big deal, but I guess it is. And we walked out of the store and that was it.
Oh my gosh.
So you learn.
Yeah, you definitely do. And the power of walking away in a car dealership is that is very powerful, very empowering.
Yeah.
For sure.
And the other thing is like, we were just looking, our car was fine. My husband wanted to go out and just see what was out there. And I said, that's fine. I said, but we don't need a car, like I said, but we'll do whatever you want. Because he was pre-looking. He goes, I just want to see. And to be honest with you, it took us forever. Like we ended up buying a truck, and it took us, I think it was a year later. And we finally found what he was looking for. And we got super great deal on our trade-in, and the price came down, and we did it like at the end of December. And it was like, I can't believe you were able to purchase what you purchased for what we got. But because we waited and we took time, and we just were not in a hurry, and we evaluated everything, we actually got a vehicle that was super reliable. It fit within what we wanted to pay, and it wasn't a burden.
Oh, that's great. No, and when you take the time to do the research, again, you've got to be careful though, because some of these salespeople are really, really, really good at what they do. But if you're not in a scarcity mindset, meaning, oh my God, we didn't look at what we wanted, now the truck died, blah, blah, blah. If you can put yourself in that position and stay strong and not get manipulated by a salesperson, you're going to have the upper hand every single time.
Yeah. And you feel like you're in control, because I think that's part of, I find with my coaching is, I was in the bio, is like getting that clarity, but building your confidence. And then all of a sudden you start to take control back, and people want to be able to control their money. They want to be able to control where their financial future is going. That's their ultimate, I find their ultimate goal is to have control. Yes, they have dreams, and they want to be able to travel and do all that. But the underlying issue is having the confidence to make strong financial decisions, but then having the control to say yes or no. And I'm going to say what my money is going to do.
I love it. Kelly, that's a great place for us to leave off. Thank you so much for joining me today. We appreciate your honesty and you sharing your financial blunders with us. All of Kelly's contact information is in our show notes. So if you'd like to reach out to her to speak with her, email, website, Facebook, and Instagram are all on there. So I hope you guys will all join me next week for another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. Kelly Flowers, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great talking.